Hey everyone, I'm Justin Woodring. Today I'll be walking you through the basics of using the terminal. Now, if you've never opened a terminal before, that's perfect because you're the exact intended audience of this video. Um, we'll be talking about the Linux and Mac terminal specifically, which is technically referred to as POSIX shell compliance. Um, although Windows has a command prompt and PowerShell, which people may refer to as a command line in some way or another, or the shell or something like that. We'll specifically be talking about Linux and Mac systems here because Linux and Mac share very basically the same features as far as terminal commands and what should the expected output would be. So let's just get started. Okay, so I've got my terminal open. I'm assuming that you could probably find it somewhere on your system. If it's on a Mac, it's usually under utilities or something like that. And if it's on a Linux system, then who knows what your terminal is actually called. But if you're running Linux, there's a pretty good chance you can find it somewhere. Um, anyway, yeah, so let's just dive right into this here. So first, we're going to look at, oh wait, what do we have right here? This part here is very important. So this is going to basically be the directory you're working in. This is a brief representation of your working directory. And this little tilde here, which is the character you can find in the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard, if you're using a standard US keyboard, which I'm assuming you are. So that is basically represents the fact you're in your home directory. So every user on a system generally has some kind of home directory assigned to them. So if you're in a terminal, this is going to be your home directory. It's also typically the same folder that is home on your Linux or Mac system. So if we just type, so cd here is the first command we're going to introduce. That is short for change directory. So change directory to the tilde up in the corner. Press enter. That runs the command. So yeah, basically that just changed our directory to home. We were already in home, so nothing really happened. There's a few other basic things you should know about the change directory and referencing directories in general, because again, we're trying to learn about working in a terminal environment. So ls is going to be something what you use to list whatever files are in your directory. So you can see I've actually got quite a few random things here, as I've used this computer for a whole bunch of things, and some of the stuff you may even see from my previous videos. But this is the home folder on my system. And then ls-a, so ls space -a, typically on a Linux or Mac system, the flags to commands, or basically extra parameters or something like that, are have a little dash before them. So ls-a is basically like it's a flag, it's like an option, so you're basically specifying something. So ls-a is going to show hidden files. Hidden files on a Linux or Mac system are going to typically be prefixed with this little dot right here. In fact, I think that's the only way it works. So anyway, the other thing, obviously, is, so let's talk about maybe manipulating files and moving around, stuff like that a bit more. So now that we can see the directory we're in, you also see that when I show the directory here, you see these two hidden files. These are technically not actual files, but they do mean something to the system. cd dot dot. So if I was trying to change directory to dot dot, that would take me up a directory. So basically, dot dot is the reference to the directory that holds the one you're in. So on a Linux system or a Mac system, the root directory, which is just a slash by itself, so just slash. There's nothing above it. You can't go above a root directory. You're just in the root directory. That's it. So you're not going to go find a dot dot in that case. So if I do ls-a, it shows it, but if I tried to cd to it, it wouldn't be able to. It would just stay in root because there is no directory that holds root. And every file path on your system is going to build from this. So if I wanted to go to my home folder, I could either do home, which is one way to get there quickly. So tilde, like I said, is always just contain the reference to your home. Or you could do it the long way, which if I go back to root, oops, let's see, go. So I'll go back to root. I can type, if you look in the ls right here, I have this little thing called home. This contains, on a Linux system, Macs, it's a little bit different the way they organize the directories, but the file system traversal is the same. And that is that basically on a Linux system specifically, if I cd into home, it contains all of the users on my system. So I can cd into Woodring here, and this will actually go into my home again. And also note that when I cd into that, it's showing a tilde. That's because it's a shorthand. Users usually work underneath their home, so it's just kind of assumed that you wouldn't need to show the entire path. Home/Justin Woodring / whatever path extends from here. For example, documents or whatever. So like if I was in documents, and then I was in another thing called code, and then another thing called code subdirectory, that would be getting kind of long. So the system is just going to chop off the part here and show it like this, and that's why. So that's basically going to show you all, like that's going to show you the it's just this, that little tilde there always shows what directory you're in, but it, you know, the tilde is prepended there because they just want to cut it short, so you don't have a thing taking up half the terminal space. So what we could do if we wanted to go somewhere else is, for example, go to ls here. I have documents, so I can cd documents. Okay, ls, cool, that's great. And then I can see my projects. Okay, so it, like I said, it's showing the current folder I'm in, but it doesn't show the previous folders. But if I want to get quickly back to this, I wouldn't have to type home/Woodring/ documents projects. I mean, that's long, you know, you don't have to do that. That does the same exact thing. Note that the directory didn't change because I'm already in that directory. You could also do this, and it works the same because it's referencing the same location. So we're just going to go into, from there, I can ls again to see what's in here. So actually some of these are from my previous videos, but going to terminal. There we go. So we're in an empty folder. There's nothing in here. Note that if I use these, you can still see the dot and the dot dot. Dot is a reference to the current folder you're in. So in other words, if you were trying to pass a path to some kind of command, you would typically, if you want to say start from the folder I'm in, you're going to do / something like / subdirectory / other file. That basically says, if I did this, it would say start the root directory and go into subdirectory. When I do this, it says start in the current directory and look for the directory called subdirectory, and then go into that, and then go into the other, and then find the other file or whatever. So you know, that basically, like I said, the dot dot. And then the other thing you could do is if you're in a directory, you could also do dot. You could do dot dot, which means go out of the directory I'm currently in, look for subdirectory, and then look for other file or other directory or whatever it happens to be at the end of that. So now we'll get to other common things you need to do. So touch on most, like I said, most Linux and basically POSIX systems. I call it POSIX because it's technically, like I said, POSIX compliance, which is an old standard. But basically Linux and Mac terminals are almost the same because of that. File system structured differently for various reasons, but the actual terminals are going to basically react the same. So new file. So there we go. I just created that file. It's not actually going to do anything because like it creates that file, but there's nothing in the file. So another terminal command that's probably good to know is cat. Cat basically just prints the contents of the current file you're looking at onto the screen. Now, if you try to do this with something like a executable or binary, that'll just cause a bunch of binary garble to get printed on the screen and may mess up your terminal session. So if you know it's an executable, probably don't print it. But like I said, there's nothing in there. So at this point, another thing to know would be something like something like editing a file. So at this point, I would use something like nano. I have a video on using vi actually to edit files, but we can use nano real quick. So just to also, so most systems these days support tab completion for file names, which means that you can basically just type half the file and press tab and it'll fill it in. So you're like, hello world. Like I said, nano is not terribly complicated. I might make a video on it at some point, but I'm just writing some stuff in there real quick. So if we use cat again, that prints the contents. Another thing that's good to know, if for some reason some shells, they may or may not show the working directory like this, or if you want to know the entire path you're working with, PWD is great for that. And then one of the last things is environment variables. A lot of times, commands you're executing use environment variables to basically know something about the environment you're running. So you can actually change some of those. In certain cases, it's useful. So do something. If you press export, this basically on your system is just going to dump every from here. Here's a lot. Some of these things are specific to the actual terminal I'm running. Some of these are specific to the desktop environment that I'm running right now, and some various other stuff. But basically, these are, you can add some if you want to. So for example, you could be like, Rust backtrace. This is one that you probably have to. You would do export equals 1. Basically, it's going to just set that. So if I run that again, should be able to find it somewhere in here. There we go. I just added that. So that's an environment variable. If you want to see an environment variable specifically, this is the way that basically this is kind of getting the more bash specific or shell specific functionality, but most of the time echo and then a $sign and the whatever environment variable you're actually trying to access is going to be the way that you would. So that, as you can see, that contains the value of 1 because I assigned it 1. And this is actually something you do if you're trying to debug Rust code. So I just thought that was a good sample, but there's plenty of other reasons you would need to change the environment variables. You usually don't have to change it every day, but certain commands just require it. So, and then the other things is, so we basically have created a file. What if we want to move a file? Cool. Well, technically renaming or actually just moving a file is moving a file. So if I want to move my file to text to renamed file text, that is exactly how you do that. If you want it to be the same name, I don't really know what that would do, honestly. You could do it outside the directory. I know that wouldn't cause any errors. So you could take my renamed file now, renamed. Tab completion isn't the most amazing thing ever. You can move that out of this folder. So I'm just going to go again, rename file text. Perfect. So as you see, the file is gone. And if I cd ... which is go up a directory, we're in project now. You can see that my rename file is out here. If I want to copy my file, I can use cp. Let's rename text, and then I can copy it to the terminal playground / rename. Okay, so the file's still here, but we can also go to the terminal playground and see it there. Two other commands that come in handy is probably chmod is more useful in my opinion than chown, but these are dangerous commands, so be careful when you're using them because they can mess up your permissions and make it difficult to actually access the files you want to. For example, change ownership specifically when used in combination with super user privileges, which you may or may not have, can cause serious issues, especially if you use it on the wrong part of the system. So, but if you're just trying to like make a file more readable or something like that, you could do the chmod 777. So chmod is a whole thing to get into. You can read about that. It's good to know about, but basically 777 means anybody on the system can read it. Anybody who's using the system can read it. So basically, that's the most open privileges you can assign something. So, it also means technically that it's executable, and that file is not executable. So you could try executing it, but it wouldn't work. That would be how you would execute something. So // you basically you can't just type rename file out text. If you want to execute a file in the terminal, you have to do // like that. And again, they say, oh, command not found. Well, that's because it's trying to execute it in bash, and that's not going to work. It's not a bash script. So it thinks it's a bash script. It could be an actual executable file on the Linux system, like it could be a executable binary. It would also try to execute it, not as bash, but it would try to execute it. And if it was an actual binary, it would probably run fine, but this isn't, so it's just going to fail. So that basically, the last thing is just removing files. If you want to remove something, you could do rename. Complete it. There you go. Perfect. The other thing you'll see a lot is the star wildcard. So if you wanted to delete everything that had renamed on the end of it, so you had like 50 files, there was like renamed 1, renamed 2, renamed 3, you could just do renamed, and then that would just it basically just selects everything that has renamed and runs that command on it. So you could even filter it like this, where it basically has to end in a text file, but everything between renamed and .text is going to be ambiguous. That works perfectly fine too. So that's one of the things people use, for example, for copying a lot of files. If you want to copy a lot of files to a specific location. And then the other thing is, finally, the last thing is, if you're using the move commands, the rm command or the cp command, if you want to do it to an entire directory, so if you want to remove an entire directory and its subfiles, you would do -r. That's recursive. It basically means go into every directory, go to the directory I'm talking about, go into every directory below it and every directory below that, and recurse through it and delete them all. That, again, is a dangerous command, especially rm-r. The other ones are less, but still could be dangerous. One of the common jokes you'll see for a Linux or POSIX system is that for people who don't know what they're doing, someone will tell them, "Oh, do this." Don't do that. Again, with super user privileges, it's kind of, usually have to have super user privileges like this on a Linux system. On a Mac, it's different. But doing this will basically just obliterate your entire drive, because it will tell it to remove the root directory recursively and to force it. That's what the -f means. So these are two separate flags: recursive and then force. Force basically says don't ask any questions and just do it. So there are some things that are so write protected it may ask questions about them. In this case, like I said, the -f just says do it anyway. So dangerous command, don't run that. I think that basically sums up the introduction to using a terminal. And if you have any more questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks.